Let's talk about one of America's oldest and, frankly, most haunting unsolved mysteries. It's a story that kicks off with this hopeful vision of a new world and ends with a single cryptic word carved into a tree. 115. That's the number at the heart of this whole thing. And we're not just talking about 115 soldiers or explorers. We're talking about men, women, and children, entire families who bet everything they had to build the very first permanent English settlement in America, way back in 1587. So what's the big deal? Well, just 3 years after they arrived, every single one of them was gone. I mean, vanished. Poof. It's like they were erased from the face of the earth. And that is the question that has kept people guessing for more than 400 years. To really get to the bottom of how they disappeared, we have to start at the moment the mystery itself was born. The moment the colony's governor, John White, sailed back to Roanoke and found nothing. Okay, so try to put yourself in his shoes. It's August 1590. He's been stuck in England for 3 long years because of a war with Spain, desperate to get back. He's not just returning to his post, he's returning to his daughter and his granddaughter, Virginia Dare, who was the first English child ever born in the Americas. And when he finally lands, the settlement is dead silent, completely deserted. Everyone is gone. Now, you can't understand how a whole colony could just up and vanish without knowing the backstory. Because this whole venture was, let's just say, cursed from the get-go. The history leading up to this was tense, it was violent, and it was a recipe for disaster. Here's something a lot of people miss. The famous Lost Colony was actually England's second crack at Roanoke. The first attempt back in 1585 was basically a military-style camp, and it failed spectacularly in less than a year. Only after that failure did they send John White's group in 1587, this time with families, which was a decision that, well, would seal their fate forever. And man, what a mess they walked into. That first colony had already poisoned the well. They showed up with bad food, had to depend on the local tribes to survive, and brought devastating European diseases with them. But the real kicker? The first governor, a guy named Ralph Lane, actually executed the local chief, Wingina. So when John White and his families arrived, they weren't stepping onto a welcoming shore. They were stepping into a hornet's nest. All right, so let's get back to John White. He's standing in this ghost town of a settlement in 1590, his heart pounding, desperately looking for any sign, any hint of where his people, where his family could possibly be. But here's the really eerie part. It's not what he found that was so chilling, it's what he didn't find. There were no bodies, no skeletons, no signs of a battle at all. The houses had been taken down, carefully, not burned or smashed. It was like everyone had just packed up and left. But where? And then he saw it. Carved deep into a wooden post on the fort's wall, there was one single word: Croatoan. This one word would become the most legendary and baffling clue in all of American history. But here's the thing. To John White, at that moment, this wasn't some spooky mystery. It was a message. He had actually worked out this exact signal with the colonists before he left for England. The plan was, if they had to move, they carved their destination, and if they were in trouble, they add a Maltese cross above the name. Croatoan was an island nearby, home to a friendly tribe. And look, no cross. For White, this meant they were alive, and they were safe. And this is where the story just becomes absolutely tragic. White was overjoyed. He was ready to sail just 50 miles south to Croatoan and find his family. But then, a monster storm, a hurricane, barrels in. The ship's main anchor cable snaps, and it becomes way too dangerous to navigate the shallow waters. The captain puts his foot down, and they turn around and sail back to England. John White never set foot in America again and died years later, never knowing for sure what happened. And because White never got to follow that clue, the story transformed from a message into a full-blown mystery. For the next 400 years, theories started to fly, with everyone trying to figure out what really went down. Okay, so the theories have really shaken out into 3 main possibilities. First, assimilation. The most obvious one, right? They just went to Croatoan Island and blended in with the friendly tribe there. Second, massacre. That despite the lack of evidence, they were wiped out by one of the more hostile tribes in the area. And third, relocation. The idea that they moved somewhere else entirely, maybe a spot on the mainland that White himself had scouted out. For centuries, that's pretty much where the story stalled, the trail growing colder and colder. But Very recently, a wild discovery didn't just breathe new life into the search. It might just rewrite the entire story. And it came from the last place anyone expected. It suggests that maybe the most important piece of this puzzle wasn't buried in the sands of North Carolina. It was sitting in the British Museum this whole time, hidden on a piece of paper, just waiting for the right pair of eyes and the right technology to find it. And the ultimate irony here? This game-changing clue was hidden on a map, the La Virginia Pars map, drawn by none other than the colony's leader, John White. You see these two little paper patches on the map? For 400 years, historians just blew past them, assuming they were simple repairs. But in 2012, some researchers got curious. They decided to take a closer look. What exactly was John White trying to hide under there? So, using all sorts of modern imaging tech, X-rays, infrared light, they were able to peer right through that patch of paper. And what they found underneath was, well, astonishing. It was a four-pointed star drawn in red and blue. And back in the 16th century, that symbol meant one thing: a fort. This hidden fort, which they now call Site X, turns out to be about 50 miles inland, which lines up exactly with a note White himself had made about a plan to move 50 miles into the Maine. They probably hid it on the map to keep it secret from Spanish spies. And here's the clincher. Archaeologists have started digging at Site X, and they're finding pieces of 16th century English pottery, the kind the colonists used. So this just blows the whole mystery wide open, doesn't it? Maybe the colony split up. Maybe some went to Croatoan, just like the message said, while another group headed inland to this secret fallback point. This new evidence doesn't solve the mystery. It actually makes it deeper and a whole lot more complex. The search for the lost colony is far from over. In fact, you could say it's just getting started.